It's here, folks. The future of Windows laptops. This is India's first Microsoft Copilot Plus laptop with ARM-based Snapdragon X-Elite. Now, why is it the future of Windows laptops? What's going to change? Let's find that out. Hi, I'm Arshad. You're watching Trakin English, your destination for detailed, incisive gadget reviews. Let's talk about this machine first. It has an all-metal body with military standard 810H certification, which is the same as the VivoBook S16 OLED, which I had tested a couple of months ago. If you haven't watched that video, go check it out. It's also very thin at 14.7 millimeters and extremely lightweight. You know, the first time I actually held it, the lightweight nature of the machine was immediately apparent to me because we have the 15-inch MacBook Air in office and that's definitely heavier. Now, the lid and the base are connected by the 180-degree ergo lift hinge, and it also passes my one-finger lid lift test. And there's not too much wobble either, so even if I'm typing away furiously, the lid stays firm. The only concern I have, like I mentioned in my S16 OLED video, is that there is a little bit of resistance in the hinge when you open and close the lid. And yeah, 180-degree means that the display can go entirely flat. And in that previous video, I had asked you guys what is the real reason for this, and I got some fantastic answers, of which this one caught my attention. For more such dank jokes from our creative subscribers, you've got to subscribe to Trakin English. Trust me, you're bound to be entertained. Now, as for the ports and buttons, you get literally everything that you need. But most importantly, I'm happy about the fact that you get two USB 4 Type-C ports with support for 4K external monitors as well. There's also an inlet and outlet on the laptop for the air intake and outtake. Now, the single zone RGB backlit keyboard has nicely spaced keys, and since this is a large machine, you also get a numpad. But I must say this, the arrow buttons are a little too narrow and tiny for my pudgy fingers. Now, these are of course proper membrane switches with 1.7mm key travel, and it's slightly mushy. But what I noticed in my testing is that once you wear them out, they are nice to type on. Now, the touchpad on this version of the VivoBook S15 requires a special mention. Of course, it's a massive touchpad, you've got a good touch response, and the click has a nice tactile feedback too. But Asus has gone ahead and added gestures to it. So if you swipe from the top to the bottom or vice versa, on the right edge, you can adjust the level of the brightness. Similarly, on the left edge, you can adjust the volume levels. And at the top part, you've got a swipe with which you can scrub videos. So if you're watching YouTube, you can go forward and backward, and it's implemented really well. The webcam on this one is a full HD unit, and thanks to Snapdragon's very own ISP, I felt that the picture quality was really good. And you also do get a privacy shutter for the privacy nuts out there. Plus, you get Windows Hello for facial recognition, but there's no fingerprint ID. So keep that in mind. So this is a 3K resolution panel with 120Hz refresh rate as well. And of course, all that OLED goodness too. So what you get are deep blacks and punchy colors. Plus, you've got HDR support, so there's HDR playback even on the Netflix app that I tested, and you get 100% DCI-P3 color support as well. And the color accuracy is good enough to make it a trustworthy display for creative professionals who rely on accuracy. And finally, you get the Harman Kardon-tuned speakers, which are rich and get fairly loud, but I felt that the bass was a little lacking. Take a listen to it for yourself. Finally, let's talk about Snapdragon X-Elite's performance. It's something I've been itching to do, and it's actually very exciting to see Apple get beaten at something. In our Geekbench test, in multi-core score, the X-Elite scored higher than the Apple M3. Actually, it scored higher than the M4 as well. But yes, it does fall behind its single-core performance. But where I was really surprised was in the Blender BMW 27 test, where Snapdragon X-Elite actually rendered the scene faster using CPU compared to MacBook M3. So it's definitely great for performance in everyday usage, and I know this because while running multiple tabs on Chrome, it just flies. Even apps opened really fast. This is one of the best productivity machines I've used all year long. Of course, my use case is limited to Google Docs, Google Sheets, a few other productivity apps like Todoist and Trello, but it still works really well. By the way, there's 16GB of LPDDR5X RAM, and it's soldered, and there's 1TB M.2 SSD as well. Also, I must definitely mention this, from the My Asus app, you can change the performance modes. By default, it runs at standard 35 watts. But if you want a quieter fan performance, which is already quiet by the way, you can run it in whisper mode at 20 watts. Now above the standard mode, you get the performance mode which runs at 45 watt TDP, and there's a full speed mode which goes up to 50 watts, and this is specific to the VivoBook S15 OLED. Now all of these modes can run on power and battery, but if you're running the full speed mode, then I would suggest using the power. Now since this is a new chipset, app support is something that we need to talk about. Currently the Snapdragon X-Elite is gaining support from developers, so a lot of them have started making their versions of their apps or software for ARM. For example, almost all of Adobe Creative Cloud suite of apps are here except for Premiere Pro, which is going to come in August. Now some apps that I wanted to use like CPU-Z or Local Send didn't work because they didn't have an ARM version. That said, I'm fairly sure that as adoption grows, app support will also grow. It will have to grow. Similarly, in gaming, the Xbox app opens up, but it doesn't list any games. It's unfortunately currently not supported. I also downloaded Call of Duty Modern Warfare from Steam, and that didn't work either. By the way, I did download a few other games from Steam, which currently is running on Microsoft's Prism translation layer. For example, I could download GTA 5, it played well, Witcher 3 worked fine, Doom worked fine, Ori and the Will of Wisps, no problem, even Super Hexagon, no problem. And we benchmarked GTA 5 because all of you just love playing GTA 5. So we ran the game at 1080p and medium settings. The game does look good, and we got an impressive average FPS of 66.3 FPS. But there were a lot of janks as well, where the FPS would go down to 11 FPS sometimes. Obviously, gaming will take a little bit more time to mature for this platform, but the fact that you can actually play GTA 5 on this machine but not on a MacBook without going through hoops, of course, that tells you that gaming on ARM-based Windows machine is already much better than gaming on MacBooks, so it's still pretty good. But it also must be said that this is not meant to be a gaming machine. It's a thin and light productivity machine, and it excels at that. And if you want a laptop specifically for productivity, you won't go wrong with this one. But here's the one major reason why I think Windows on ARM is going to be the future. Absolutely mad battery life. This is the first Windows machine that I've tested that can match the MacBook in terms of battery life and sometimes even beat it in terms of battery longevity. In regular usage, I'm getting 14 hours of battery life from the 70 watt-hour battery inside the laptop. And you know what? In the night, I shut the laptop lid, went off to sleep and woke up to see the idle battery drain. It was just 1%. And just like I've been using most MacBooks, I don't switch off this machine. If your workday on the laptop is about 8 hours a day, you can easily use this for 1.5 days without having to plug it in. You know, as journalists who have to go to press events, this is impressive performance. And I'm talking about at 120 Hz, by the way, not even 60 Hz. And finally, you get a 90 watt charger inside the box, and you get 90 watt charging support as well. Now with Snapdragon X-Elite, you also get 45 TOPS of NPU, which means that the Asus VivoBook S15 OLED is the first Microsoft Copilot Plus laptop in our country. Of course, there's also the dedicated Copilot key, but here are a few new features that you get with Copilot Plus. Now, live captions, as the name suggests, can create live captions for the content you're watching on YouTube or Netflix. So I watched a Trakin Tech video in Hindi, and the live caption actually worked pretty well. I was surprised. There are also a bunch of new Windows Studio effects that you can try out with the camera. For gaming, there's something called automatic super resolution. What this essentially does is that if you're running the game at a lower resolution, then it of course uses AI to enhance the resolution. It's currently working on Witcher 3 and a few other games. We tried it out, and it looks kind of odd, but it works. And finally, there's Co-Creator. So Co-Creator is a part of the Paint app. So once I drew out a rough sketch with my really bad drawing skills and used a prompt, it actually generated the right image for me. In fact, there are some nice presets too. See, I don't find it very useful, but it could be useful for you. Oh, by the way, Windows Recall, which was a part of Copilot Plus, is not live yet because Microsoft is trying to get the privacy and security right after complaints were raised. Now, since there's NPU, it's not just Microsoft, but Asus is also trying to do something with AI. Basically, they created an app called StoryCube, which collates all of your images and video files from different sources, and it then uses AI to categorize images and videos, create memories. Yeah, if that feels familiar, that's something that our phones like Android and iOS have been doing for a long time. I've said this many times before on many occasions, and I will say this again. The future for laptops is ARM, and I'm really bullish, and there is a reason for it. And that reason, my friends, are the gains to battery life, which can convince anyone to move away from x86. I really want to see what Intel and AMD come up with, but right now, this is the king. And to give you that fantastic battery life without any significant hit to performance is absolutely commendable. Yes, the software support might take a little while to get mature, but for a first-gen product that's already out there, I still think it's pretty good. Now, Asus has priced the machine at $1 1,25,000 odd, and that's about 10,000 rupees cheaper than the MacBook Air 15-inch. Of course, the official difference in prices is that much. But you know what? The MacBook Air 15-inch won't give you that kind of battery life, and it doesn't have an OLED display with 120Hz. And since I am such a fan of thin and light laptops, that's making me want to switch to this machine. What about you? Let me know in the comments. That's it from me for this one. I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, keep tracking and stay safe.